We're back. We're back. We were just talking about ways to get you guys informed that the show is now on another channel, but again, it's kind of redundant that I would tell you that on this channel because you're not on it. You wouldn't find it. You wouldn't see it. But anyway, I had a proper subject for this episode during the middle of the week, but I've decided to change my mind based on a rather hilarious occurrence that has happened today, this morning, and I'll explain what that is without incriminating these poor folks. But I want to talk about some concurrent themes that govern people's behaviors that were very obvious with these individuals. That if you could avoid, I think you'd have a much better existence. And for me, I obviously don't think the way that I think is special or enhanced or anything like that, because it's just the way that I think. I've taken on board a shitload of information to change who I was prior to this version of me, and I think you should be, because you're accumulating things as you go through life, and that can come from experiences and information and books and videos and all those sorts of things. And I think you should have an active role in developing yourself every single day. Not so you could get anything out of it, but that Chris Williamson was talking to the iced coffee hour guys. I was listening to that during the week, and he had a really cool saying, and it's essentially hold beliefs really loosely and be quick to change them when you find out new information. Because a lot of people will die on a hill that they've just found 20 seconds ago without the proper context or information to justify them dying on the hill. And you see this between political ideologies and a lot of other different things. It becomes more of a process of salvaging the brand identity than it does the actual talking points themselves. And he also talked about an interesting phenomenon that I'm going to extrapolate on today, is that you're not a very deep thinker if I can basically figure out where you stand on each of the common talking points by the way that you stand on one of them. And so the obvious example is if you have blue hair, you're going to be led down a path of thinking about very specific things, especially if you consider the US politics system with gun control and abortion and all these sorts of things. We're not going to get into it because it'll fucking get pulled down probably. But you see what I'm saying. And if the guy drives a big TRX truck and probably does jiu-jitsu and lifts weights a bunch, then they're more in line to thinking against all of those things. If you press them on one of those points, their answer, if they are a non-deep critical thinker, you can kind of make the assessment about all of their other topics or all of their other viewpoints on topics. And then you can get a deeper, you can get a good understanding of who that individual is, but you're not really getting any depth, if that makes sense. And I've been guilty of this before, thinking about things that a person thinks that I like, therefore I like all the things they talk about, or I rather agree with all the things they talk about because I like this person. It's basically the same thing, right? You're not showing a deep level of critical thinking because you're assuming a lot. And I think a really interesting and cool practice to get familiar with is asking yourself, hang on, why do I believe that? Was that something that was given to me? Was it something that I am parroting from somebody else? Is it just the common way to think about things? And during the 1920 period, or years 2019 and 2020 period, that started to become a lot more prevalent for a lot of people. And I think it's underrepresented in the statistics in terms of that one very specific statistic of who did or didn't get poison in their arm. But I think it either put people in one of two camps, and it really drove a hard line. It put people in, well, I have to trust this because I'm in danger, and that's going to then therefore construct all of my thought processes moving forwards because safety is my highest priority, which to a point is completely retarded. But anyway, if you value safety that much, go to prison. Like security would be a better example, because you're going to be locked in a very small box and you're going to get very square meals, and it's going to be at the same time every day, and it's going to be very safe and very secure. Now, obviously, the environment of the people that are in there are probably not going to perpetuate your safety and security, but you get what I mean. It's a hyperbolic example on purpose to drive the point home. You could say the same thing as lock yourself inside your house and then put up metal barricades on the inside of the house and never leave. That would be about the safest thing that you could do, provided that there is oxygen within the house. But then you also run into the trap of no food supply, and water supply is going to be limited to a point of view, and you're not going to get vitamin D and sun and blah, blah, blah. You start to realize the futility of that kind of mindset where safety is the highest priority out of anything. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yes, safety is within that pyramid, but it's also at the very tippy top is self-actualization. And it's of my opinion that you don't gain that from over-representing safety within everything that you do. Yeah, okay, don't go down dangerous neighborhood pathways at midnight or at 3 o'clock in the morning. Probably going to be a bad idea. But that isn't necessarily even a safety argument, it's just an intelligence argument, because you wouldn't do that no matter how capable you are, no matter how loaded up to the gills you are. Sure, maybe if you're in an Iron Man suit, do whatever you like, but at the same time, it's not a matter of just thinking about safety, in my opinion. It's a matter of understanding that, yeah, you should probably not cross the road when there's traffic there. That's a safety consideration, but it also doesn't mean locking yourself into a very tiny box and only focusing on what the safe option should be, thereby limiting all of your progression and all of your development and all of your self-actualization as you start to rung your way up that pyramid, and all of the fulfillment of your existence, in my opinion. And so the situation today was very similar to that. There were these two young individuals who came into the gym, and they've been there for the first time. And they know one of the guys who trains there every day, twice a day, very well. And we're just talking to him, having a conversation with him. And it's quite funny because it makes a lot of sense as to how they're all together. And I'm trying to be vague on purpose so that these guys don't feel like I'm bashing them, because I'm not. But it's this archetype of their decision-making skills that has got them to where they're at that I think it's really important to shed light on, and how they could actually benefit from listening to this as well. I highly doubt that they will ever see this, but in the off chance that they do decide to go down a path of self-development as a result of pursuing jiu-jitsu or whatever, I wouldn't want them to think I'm cheating on them, because I'm not. It's just some of their decisions were brutally obvious right in front of our faces, and if they changed those things, again, in my opinion, they would be much better off. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about to concretize it. I'm just a lazy person, came out of one of their mouths on several occasions throughout multiple different conversations. That is extremely limiting language that is only going to hurt you. It's never going to help you saying that, ever. Not even understanding that, and not even seeing it, or maybe even having it at the tip of your tongue and then questioning whether you should say it or not, because then it becomes physical, it becomes real. Not having a buffer between thinking it and then saying it, I think that's where the development lies. And of course, if you have no evidence to the contrary, maybe it's true. Maybe it is true. Maybe you are a lazy person. But the confession of that performatively to other individuals is not helping you move forwards. let's say, for instance, that you define being lazy as bad, as a negative trait, which I think most people would agree with. What does professing that to other people actually do for you, aside from attempt to excuse you from why you haven't done XYZ? And that's another element to this. That's another layer upwards. What does excusing yourself from responsibility demonstrate to yourself, and then demonstrate thereby to other people as well? It's that, well, I don't hold myself accountable to my own goals. I don't hold myself accountable to my own situation. I don't hold myself accountable to my own actions. Immediately from this conversation, I was already kind of like with my head in my hands, because it's so blatantly obvious. And I'm sure somebody that's levels above where I'm at in terms of personal development and business and so on and so forth can look at all the dumb shit that I'm doing. Even yesterday, I am this close to joining a YouTube cohort. I haven't had the phone call yet to figure out what the ins and outs of it are. But even after watching one of these videos, I looked at my own channel and went, oh, I'm doing so many dumb things that would make it so difficult for somebody to think about what this channel is about, that they'd probably get very confused and click off it because they didn't have a direct path forwards that was very obvious. And I thought that I was doing the right thing by making videos in a certain way and blah, blah, blah. And I think I am doing a pretty good job at making the videos. But it's also, that was only one small part of the total summation of everything that I should be focused on, that they are obviously experts at because they've been doing it for so many people and so many different businesses. And it's so brutally obvious to them and yet so blindsided by me. So I empathize with that situation, and I understand that this is not like a hierarchical judgment of looking down upon. It's really obvious to me, and I want to help make it obvious to you as well. So for everybody that listens to this, it's the same thing as how giving advice to somebody is so brutally easy, whereas receiving that same advice to yourself, you wouldn't even consider it, because I don't know, it's this weird thing in our brain chemistry where giving advice is so much easier than taking it, even if we were to take the same advice that we just gave. And it's also an interesting psychological phenomenon that the advice that we give is typically the advice that we need. And so if you'd actually take your own advice, you'd be a lot further along. And it's only from your perspective that you can give advice. So it's only with your current trials and tribulations and also your triumphs that you can even offer advice anyway. And I get this weird sensation sometimes that a lot of guys in my group, they come to me and they ask me for questions. And a lot of it is about life and business as well as jiu-jitsu, obviously. But sometimes they thank me for my perspective, and I'm like, yeah, that's just the way that I see it. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's just how I see it. And they're like, wow, it's really impressive how you can come to that assessment. And I'm like, yeah, kind of, but not really. I have this weird like aversion to it. And I think it's only because I think that most advice is just very poorly made up rubbish, that most people are just projecting onto one another and based on their own viewpoints. And so it's always the fat person who wants to tell you about keto, and it's always the smoker who wants to tell you about health, and those sorts of things, right? And if they'd only take their own advice, they'd be where they want to be. It's always that mate who's never done anything with himself that's the expert in business, that if I tried, I would be a millionaire. And you just turn around to that guy and say, shut the fuck up. Because it's not true, obviously. Because if you did genuinely want it, you would do it. You would do it. I've never seen, ever, not once, somebody genuinely want something, somebody genuinely strive to get it and not get it. Never seen it, not once. It's just the delta between you understanding what you thought it was going to take and what it actually takes. And it's usually in the neighborhood of 3 to 500x, the effort. And people want to talk about this in terms of like social media. They're like, oh well, I posted for 100 days in a row, and I barely grew 1,000 followers. You're like, yeah, that checks out. Sounds about right. Or I was talking to somebody the other day. He said to me, he goes, I'm doing a similar online course thing to you. And I did like the free group and I got like 30 people in it. And I just, I just expected it to do a lot better when I started to promote that they could pay for the service and it would be an upgrade and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how many did you get pay out of the 30 people? And he's like, 3. He goes, I think that's really bad. And I said, well, no, that's actually in line with the majority of statistics that I've read, that roughly about 10% of anyone who's a lead, if your sales skills are like average and mediocre, which I guarantee they are because you haven't been doing it for very long, that's about in line with the statistics that I've read, 10%. Landing pages typically is around 5 to 8% of traffic. Sales calls, if you're if you're really good, 35%, 40% maybe. Cold leads, 1 in 10, 2 in 10, roughly. It's just the fact that people haven't reconciled that it's gonna take a fuckload more work than you think it is. And sometimes you just got to get over it. It's just pretty simple. But it's those people that really need to take their own advice, and the ones that are professing that they could do it if they tried. Well, you did try and you failed because you ran into a statistic like that, thinking that it would be, oh, well, if I get 10 people that are leads, then I should close 9 of them because 10 people are interested. It's not how it works. Business teaches you a lot about people. And it also teaches you a lot about yourself and your own personal expectations of things. And I think it's really interesting to go through as an exercise. And think about it like this. The reason why somebody doesn't buy your thing could be 100, 200 in number. Quite easily. Like there's a reality where there's a person who's perfect for your business. Everything lines up. All of it. They've got the authority to make the decision. They've got the resources to make the decision. And they've got the time available. But their girlfriend just broke up with them. And they're not interested in development and whatever you're selling. That's a legitimate example of how they could be the perfect fit, the perfect client. They could jump on a sales call with you, or at least they'd prevent jumping on the sales call because they're having a bit of a shit day. That could happen. And you're never going to know about it because people aren't really likely to confess that much, to be fair. And so in your head, it's either, well, that's just the way that it is. Or it's, well, they like don't believe in my product and maybe I should stop believing in it. And that's, they had all the perfect attributes and blah, 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 and they still didn't want it. So maybe I need to change my sales page, or maybe I need to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And then you go into analysis by paralysis, and then you just end up working yourself up into a feverish sweat, and then you quit. That's most people. But if you genuinely want something and you genuinely want to try, it means that working on yourself is just as important as your work itself. And that means coming to the level of personal development where you can recognize these things ahead of time and be okay with the unknown of it as well. You don't have to know why that person didn't sign up. It's helpful in terms of a survey if they say, well, it needed this and it needed this for me to get across the line, and then you can go and build those things. And for the next person that has that same query, they can now benefit as a result of that like failed conversation. But it wasn't failed because you gained the relevant data from somebody who would be a customer and could be a customer. But now that you have that opportunity to sit there and build those next things out, you get 5 more people that don't have that resistance there and don't have that obstacle there. And then they just sign up and they become great clients or great customers. So the thing that's really important, and it ties into the theme of the episode in terms of personal development and being very careful about which beliefs you hold and which perspectives you choose to take, which hills you choose to die on. Because I think that dying on the hill of I'm too lazy is completely fucking stupid. And then this individual may not even know that he's doing that. And so that's why you get the old version of me would just call them a complete moron and disregard them completely. But I'm getting to a stage currently where I have some sort of sympathy for that situation, but also you can't help people more than they want to help themselves. But maybe you can nudge them in the right direction. And this is something I battle with a lot. And this is something I've talked to my mate Oscar about a lot as well. We've had many, many, many conversations about this. And he's struggled with this in a sense of being very proficient and competent in the e-commerce space, wanting to teach people how to do it themselves as well, so that they can experience a relative gain in the same areas that he has had through brutish hard work and discipline, and figuring problems out that lesser people would have quit underneath. There's basically one word to describe him. It's pretty much grit, like just grinding through things. Is it for everybody? Nah. But has he proven that it works? Absolutely. But the thing that we've both spoken about wrestling with is like, how do you get people from 0 to 1? Because getting people from $1 million business to 5 mil is really easy. It's just a couple of operational things, really. And it's a couple of key hires. That's all it is. That's legitimately all it is. And that might not seem, okay, it has its complexities, but it's much simpler than going from $0 in a business to 10K a month. Much simpler. Because there are just so many things you don't know about. And there's so many things that can go wrong that could just wipe out your entire thing and you didn't even recognize it. And you have no buffer. Like big companies, $100 million companies can forcibly make mistakes knowing that the 8th thing that they try will probably recoup the results of all of the others, but still stay afloat as they test these things out. Whereas if you're just beginning, you can't afford to miss. And so that's the brutality of it. It's also, in my opinion, very similar archetypal mindsets that will say things like, I'm just too lazy, or I'm just too stupid, or any of these sorts of things. You gotta really check yourself on that type of language. You really do, because I was reading something yesterday about the total reduction of specific words in the English language since, funnily enough, the 2019-2020 period. And who was it that posted it? Girth Brooks posted it. Interesting fella. He's like a Olympic weightlifting sort of dude. I've been following him for years and years and years, but very good perspective on things, very good mindset, grows his own food, has his own farm, has a beautiful little family, lifts weights, has a big beard, like traditional sort of looking dude, and runs his own business and that sort of stuff. And his caption underneath it was "shit bussin' FR," which a lot of people speak like that. And if it's anything to go by that your words generate how you think, and your thoughts generate how you act, your acts generate your habits and your behaviors, and that generates your life, that is terrifying. It's terrifying. Let's do this as a thought experiment. I don't think I saved it, but I've got a prominent example that I think about when I think about the way that we have really belittled our own language. Let's think about it like this. This is an 1800s love letter. And take away the context of it being like a romantic letter, but just listen to the language. My dearest Harriet, ever since the fatal or auspicious evening that I was introduced to your endearing presence, my heart has been riveted to the lovely image of her, who must become the arbitress of my future happiness or misery. That the latter will be the case, will not endure a moment's reflection, For independent of my own feelings, it would be cruel to suppose that a bosom formed of virtues most sensitive and tender could ever consign a heart touched with those very virtues to become the victim of aspiring delusion. So more or less he's saying that he knows it's either going to end really well or end really badly, but that he is very fond of her softness, so that he would deem it appropriate to pursue her based on that, knowing that she would let him down easy if it didn't work. No, my dear Harriet, you will never overwhelm me with such a fatal reply and thus annihilate all those endearing prospects of future felicity. Felicity. Which I have so ardently cherished as an alleviation then to those fond feelings, which at the present, severely agitated by suspense, permit me, my dear girl, to address your respected parents, to form a formal recognition of my visits and attentions to a concession from my Harriet, will relieve me from a state of inexpressible anxiety and in part secure me a glowing tranquillity which is only in the power of you, my love, to bestow, anxiously expecting a favourable reply. I am, dearest Harriet, yours sincerely. I'll read the answer too, because I'm thoroughly enjoying this. Sir, in answer to your flattering letter, I must beg leave to remind you that in giving you the permission of addressing my beloved parents upon the subject of your attachment to me, such permission must be understood as implying a reciprocity of feeling, which indeed in a point involving all the consequences of my future happiness is no ordinary speculation. However, that I may not incur the charge of cruelty from one whom I must acknowledge I at present value with no ordinary esteem, I shall, with the permission of my parents, feel the pleasure in a continuation of your society. But with regard to the success of your present enterprise, time and circumstances alone must determine. Begging you to receive my best acknowledgments for the honour conferred, I remain, sir, with sincere regard, your affectionate friend. Oh, brutal. Brutal. Got fucking sent back to the Shadow Realms with that one, buddy. Poor bastard. That was a very affectionate letter, and he's just been destroyed. Some 200 years later on a podcast. But do you see there's like a whimsical nature to the way that they articulate themselves. And these weren't wordsmiths back in the day. These were ordinary people. The reason why this is important and the reason why it terrifies me is because that is represented in liking a chick's photo today. That is represented in WYD. What are you doing? At 3 o'clock in the morning like a fucking peasant. Terrifying. Terrifying. And so I think there's some things that come out of this realization for you and I together. We really have to get back to reading impressive works with articulate language, no matter how difficult it is to disseminate, to distill rather. Disseminate would be after, but to distill that into your own mind and then disseminate. Some genuinely impactful and proper articulate language. And I'm not always the best at this, don't get me wrong. I think I'm a fucking moron some of the time, but I also try really hard. And that means that I can sort of skirt around the edges of that. Like, I don't think I'm the most intelligent person by any regard. There's proof of that on the internet all over the place. I've said some dumb shit. I think it's kind of funny now in retrospect. There's nothing you can do about it, but get over it. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says dumb shit from time to time. Nothing you can do about it. Nobody's perfect. But I think an active effort towards the pursuit of having the ability to speak like that, first of all, having the ability to understand it. Second of all, having the ability to articulate yourself as it regards those types of words. And everybody's going to say, oh yeah, but it's old school and it's outdated. Not if you don't let it be. Not if you don't let it be. Even listen to a more recent example of the songs of the 70s. and the 80s, comparative to today. Just go and pick any song from the 80s, anyone you like, and then play anything from Little Pump today. And you start to see the degradation of language. Things are being added to the dictionary that shouldn't be in there. Things are being omitted from language that should be in there. And I'm not saying you have to go and look up the most impressive words and go on in a thesaurus and look up all the synonyms and all those sorts of things, but having an active engagement in the way that you can communicate and expanding that day by day is very important. Very important. Because it shapes the way that you think. And the way that you think governs your entire existence. And if you're just listening to brain rot rubbish material, then that's going to be the product of your mind. I was watching this video yesterday, and it's fascinating because there's one key unifying theme or fixation on an individual from, I would say, the majority of martial artists, whether they be boxers, whether they be Muay Thai fighters, kickboxers, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, judo. I would bet the house that the most prominent figure for the most amount of people, especially at the highest level, is probably Bruce Lee. And this video was about him and how impactful he's been. And people like Mike Tyson talking about him, people like Conor McGregor talking about him, people like Yuri Prohaska talking about him, like world champions, top level guys of their sport. And some of the greats of the greats are still venerating a guy that came well before them. And it's all a part. He's been able to basically bring down the barriers between several different sports and several different people, and they've all done pretty well for themselves. I imagine there's a lot of people who like Bruce Lee, who think about him regularly, who have nothing to do with martial arts and have no physical achievements or anything like that. But I think the thing is, like, his philosophy and his way of life, the way he spoke, was really motivating to people. And it was his ability to communicate that enabled that. If he was saying stuff like Girth Brooks was saying, like shit bussin' for real, if you heard Bruce Lee say that, you're automatically dismissing every single accomplishment he's ever had. Immediately. But he's got such an articulate way of speaking, in a second language, by the way. Be like water, my friend. Like the whole speech on water. If you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you pour water into a bowl, it becomes the bowl. It's seamless, flowing. You can see it take on the shape of anything that it enters. It is extremely strong, but also extremely fluid. Like, just thinking about water is a fascinating exercise. The way that he articulates it, it takes any shape, any form, but also when you meet it with force, it will meet you with the direct and proportional force. But then you touch it softly, you go right through it. Fascinating to think about. And if you are a martial artist, you will have respect for that as well. Because if you meet something with a lot of resistance, or rather, this is a better way to explain it. If you are meeting something with a lot of resistance, be like the soft touch water. Allow it to just go with it. And if you have that soft touch, be firm. And it's always the opposing of those two things. It's like when McGregor's talking about power is an illusion, because the perfectly placed punch is all about precision. And if you hit the perfect spot, it doesn't matter how hard you throw. At all. And you've got these big brutish individuals that just throw overhand, 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 overhand. And they're very effective because sometimes they hit the button and sometimes they don't. But they cause a lot of damage and carnage and destruction along the way. And they use a lot of energy and a lot of force. But those guys that they move beautifully in like a flowing capacity, like your Bruce Lees, your early stage McGregors, your early stage Wonderboy Thompsons, these karate style guys, you watch how they move in and out. You watch how they strike seamlessly. It's really nice to watch. And it also doesn't look like they're straining or gritting or tensing or overcompensating with attributes whatsoever. And it's a really nice philosophy for life as well. When life is going fast, slow down. When life's going slow, speed up. It's that tale of the two opposites that's really, really cool to think about. When you're experiencing a lot of resistance, calm. When you're experiencing no resistance, firm. And it's the interplay between those two things that gives you an unparalleled amount of progression in terms of your own development. But thinking about it like that, and go back to the original intention of this conversation, it's being careful with the way that you think about things and also the way that you speak and how you articulate yourself. Because it could be the reason that you get disproportionate results, or it could be the reason that you get none and you have a life that is otherwise outside of your choosing and also very low in the metrics of fulfillment, enjoyment, happiness. Because I'm not going to make a broad sweeping assessment of the individuals that I met this morning, but if you're somebody who's willing to say, I'm just lazy, I very much doubt you have a high level of happiness in your life. I very much doubt it. Because I know how much joy and satisfaction I get. And cool, we could be different. I'm accounting for that. I know how much joy and satisfaction I get from doing hard things that I don't want to do, thereby destroying the idea that I am quote unquote lazy, because I'm not. I get so much satisfaction from every single day where I do what I said I was going to do. And I don't let things like that get in my way. Not my own language, not my own actions. Even base urge desires. Like professing that you are somebody who is lazy is succumbing to your base reptilian brain desires of, I don't feel like it. I'm unmotivated, as if you need motivation to act whatsoever. I'm hungry. I'm tired. These sorts of things. If those things are enough to stop you, you're in some trouble, in my opinion. Cool if you don't agree. But I think being able to overcome them, to do things when you don't feel like doing it, and actually expand your mind. I was listening to a video yesterday. David Goggins was talking about this idea that when you quit, your mind does this. When you refuse to quit and you refuse to give up and you actually train your brain, which you can do, it's not just about training your body, it's about training your mind. When you train your mind, it goes like this. And the reason why is because you're sending the electrical message to your brain that we're not going to give up. The task must be fulfilled. He's not going to stop. And if that's the case, we've got to get creative because our current system of operating is not going to get us there. So your brain turns inward on itself and goes, all right, we need to become more efficient. We need to become more intelligent. We need to become more aware of specific things. We need to become more skilled. There's got to be something that we can do that can allow us to get to that task or to complete that task and get to that achievement. And trust me, I know that this is how it works from my own personal anecdotal experience. When you're running your head up against the wall and you just can't figure out what you need to do to get over this certain thing, this roadblock in your life, and you quit, you never find out. You never find out. You never find out that you could actually do it and what you're made of, basically. And without sounding so wishy-washy, egalitarian kind of thing, everybody's made of some incredible stuff. Everybody's made of as much incredible stuff as they choose to exhibit. Some people choose to be petty pieces of shit. And that's just them. That's what they're choosing. The world didn't make them that way. That's what they're choosing. Some people decide to be very lazy, very flippant, not very determined, not very encouraged by their own thoughts. And then that's what they choose to be, and that's what they get. Some people choose to be made of hard as nails, that they're not going to quit until they get what they want. And they are also going to accept the consequences of declaring that, because it's going to take 300 to 500 times more effort than they thought it was going to. And that's okay to them because they've already said they're committed to doing it. Think about the products of those different mindsets. Think about what's possible with those different mindsets. And now remember, it's just a mindset that you can adopt. You really can. Goggins is proof of it. I don't usually leverage on him too much for ways of thinking, but I've been reintegrated or reinformed of a lot of the ways that he thinks about things, and I think it's a fucking phenomenal mindset, to be fair. I used to be one of those people that said, oh yeah, like it's just running, bro, get over it. But no, that's a false assessment of what he's trying to display. The running is a metaphor for doing shit you don't want to do daily. Every step. Every step. Like when he's running that marathon with broken feet, they're like, oh my God, how did you do that? I don't quit. Imagine what would become available to you if you could adopt the same mindset. I don't quit. I just don't. I don't give up, ever. For any reason. Never. Any reason. He had this really cool line in the video that I was watching. And he's like, there is energy everywhere for you to accomplish the shit that you want to accomplish. He goes, I find it in the looks on the faces of the other people. Whether it's looks of doubt or terror, because he calls it going on a surge. And he goes, I take a lot of energy out of the fact that people are looking at me like I'm a crazy person, because when they're getting tired, I'm going harder. Like we've done the same amount of kilometers at the moment, and I'm now running a lot faster than they are. As they're starting to go down, I'm starting to pick up. He goes, I thrive off that. Imagine if that was your base operating mode. When people expected you to start to slow down, you just kept going. How do you think people get to that position, by the way? They choose it and they work on it. They build a habit around it. That when people expect them to stop, they don't. People expect them to slow down, they don't. Not even that. It's not even that they don't stop or slow down. It's that they get better the longer it goes, which is mind-boggling to some people. Because you're like, well, how is that even possible? He's trained his mind to think that way. If you can train your brain to start to conserve resources the longer the event goes, then that's exactly what it'll do. But that arguably is like your base operating hardware system. But it's been trained like that via evolution, via survival mechanisms, and via society today, to be fair. But it's programmable. You can change the way you think. So imagine for a second that you could change the way you think like that. And you just click your fingers and say, well, now I don't give up. And not only do I not give up, I go further when I think about giving up. So much so that I don't even think about giving up anymore. It's my time to go again. And then you watch these videos on the internet where this is the example. And there's people that have all these crazy circumstances happen to them. Like this, I was watching this 400-meter race, maybe even an 800-meter race, because they were going at a not a crazy pace, but they definitely weren't sprinting, but it was probably 800-meter, maybe even 1600, in a track and field event. And this one girl gets tripped up by a girl behind her. She falls over. And most people would just go, oh, my race is done. There's no way I'm catching them. This chick gets up, gets her arms and legs moving, and motors down to win the race and finish first. That doesn't just happen. That is the installation of a mindset that completely understands that pressure is an intrinsic thing and that no amount of pressure is ever going to change how you perform if you understand that, because it's just an intrinsic thing rather than an extrinsic thing. And thereby it's something that you have control over, or at the very least, your response to it is something you have control over. And then you can immediately go to your next task, which happens to be, in this race, 1 foot in front of the other. They talk about this representation as well in NBA shooters. And I believe it was Michael Jordan, maybe even Kobe Bryant. He goes, it's not my job whether the ball goes in the basket or not. It's my job to shoot. And so if some miss, I can't get hung up on it. If some make it, I can't get hung up on it. It's next job. And you see this in a video with Kobe Bryant. He ends up scoring a basket, steals the inbound pass where they throw the ball to the opposite team, gets it stolen off him, and then immediately chases the guy down the court to start to block his shot, blocks his shot, gets back on his bike to go to the next shot that he's going to be part of in the offense. Most people would be so high from shooting a shot that they completely miss the opportunity to play on every play. And this was something I did really poorly at when I was playing League. I would be either rattled and disappointed from a mistake that I made that would last several minutes and would take me completely out of the play for several minutes, where I was just treading water, or I would be very elated and running high off the fumes of something that I did that was good, that would also take me out of the present moment to stop me from being effective for those next couple of minutes. I was an emotional wreck when I was playing footy. I didn't even recognize it. I really didn't. And I falsely assumed that it was some sort of like genetic predisposition or something like that, that these other players were outperforming me, because I would win everything in training. I would win all the fitness tests. I would win the sprints, the weights, like the majority of the events. I was in the top 2 or the top 3. And as a front rower, that's unheard of. Like, I had the motor, I had the legs, I had all the physical attributes, but the mentality was the thing that was lacking the most. And I remember situations in games where I'd perform something really well, but then I would just do nothing for like the next 10 minutes. I could not get myself to move my feet in a way. Like, I felt like my whole body was made of concrete. And it was represented in my play style too. Like, if you watch my highlights, you can see me just charging through people. But I only had like 6 of them in a game because I was so hell-bent on utilizing attributes that I did it in such an inefficient way that ended up me exhausted, kind of like a spazzy white belt, that ended up me exhausted and everybody else running circles. And then under fatigue, you make really bad decisions. Then you get exposed. Then you get embarrassed. Not fun. Then you're forced to look at other people who are nowhere near the athlete, but that are doing way better things than you. And you're just forced to try and figure it out. And then you only train harder. And then the harder training puts you in a further recovery debt, and you end up in this detrimental downward cycle. It was a fun experience because I learned a lot. I did learn a lot. And even in some aspects of jiu-jitsu, in levels of competition that I've been in as well. Really, like the thing I'm working on currently, and I have a little bit of time off. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I've got fucking bullshit staff from Thailand. Even if you shower and even if you do all the right things, I think it's the immune system compromisation that ends up getting you. So I'm going to be taking that on board and really fixating on immune system health while I'm traveling. This is another lesson that I've been learning because I've been out for training for so long. I've got a big fucking bullet hole in my arm and my leg. It's really annoying. And there's literally nothing you can do about it based on the information that I've now learned. It's like, it's not necessarily the contact with like dirty mats or anything like that, because staph is always on your skin, but it's your immune system that's the biggest linchpin to whether you get it or not. And usually when you get it is when you're really run down. And then obviously it strikes while you are run down. It's kind of like the flu, if that makes sense. Like the flu only strikes you when you're super stressed from work and your missus is giving you the shits and all that sort of jazz. And your body just doesn't have the resources to be able to respond because it's dealing with the stress. And then an extra stressor comes through and just wipes you out. So I'm really looking at multiple ways that I can buff that up. Oil of oregano is one of those things. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on the episode. I can definitely say the horse drug that got very famous a couple of years ago. That's now in the routine. It's a wonder drug, by the way. It's absolutely phenomenal. There's a paste version, like an ointment version, that has been known in some anecdotal research. It's not been peer reviewed, and it never will be because the system's corrupt. But to limit the growth of melanoma on the skin, which is fascinating. Again, I don't know how much I can say because I get taken down, but yeah. So I'm going to start using that and making sure my immune system's tippy top. But yeah, one of the things I'm going to be working on is my ability to do what I just spoke about, is go harder even in the presence of fatigue, and rise as a result of fatigue. Like fatigue is now going to be linked in my brain as the go button, not the slow button. How am I going to do that? I'm going to absolutely fucking torture myself. I'm not joking. People are going to think this is so fucking weird when they listen to it, but I'm not joking. I'm being 100% serious. Like, my mechanical steed, my air bike, is going to get some fucking reps. And I'm also considering ways of doing specific exercises before jiu-jitsu rounds to make my muscles sore and then performing anyway. Not that the intensity of the round will get higher, but that the stress inside my body will be at a peak level, and then I will still have to perform mentally. And that's the way that I'm going to start training my mind. And it's a working theory, but it is the theory that I'm running with. And from studying a lot of individuals at very high levels, Max Verstappen, for one, his dad, psychopath, but created the best driver of all time, used to manipulate the car one way or the other, the go-kart. Obviously not the F1, they'd never let him do that, but manipulate the go-kart in one way to get Max to tap into his sensory apparatus of feeling, sight, smell, touch, taste, to really hone in on what the problem was. And if there was no problem, which his dad would put in every now and again to keep it interesting, he said, you better not lie, because I'll know if you do. And then you're not actually trying to figure it out. You're just trying to appease the game. And that's one thing you really have to get through to children, in my opinion, is that like your internal reality matters 10 times more than the external. And I did this very poorly as a kid, where I think I've told this story before. I was worried about the speed of which I was reading. And so instead of actually reading at a fast pace, understanding what I was reading, I would just flip the pages slightly before the next person would, sitting next to me. Because I'd see them like, you know, when you're reading and then someone picks up the corner of the page, and when you're about to finish that page, then you turn. I would just watch them out of the corner of my eye, whether they were pinching the top of the page or not. And so subsequently, I wasn't fucking learning anything, and I was actually slowing down my reading because I wasn't practicing the very thing I was so worried about. Isn't it funny how your mind falsely attributes the fact that the other person would even be thinking about you because they're doing the thing and reading the material and that you think you're impressing them by flipping a page faster, but that they're not even paying attention to you and you're just shooting yourself in the foot because you're not even really reading. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And people do it all the time in the online business space. They rent a fucking Lambo and then they go, yeah, I'm killing it in business. But then you ask them one business question and they have no idea how to answer you. It's really easy to spot the fakes. It's really easy. I do not sympathize with people that get stuck in scamming business relationships. It's so fucking easy to see. I had a guy, I know how hard it is to build a following on Instagram, to keep a captivated audience where you genuinely deliver solid value. I know how fucking hard it is. I know the work that it takes. So when Bashal messages me, first of all, red flag. Never accept anybody messaging you for anything ever. They are trying to scam you. They genuinely are. DMing cold is the shittest strategy of all time. If you want to start a business, to the best of your ability, message your friends and family so you can get a bunch of reviews, post the reviews. Talk about the transformation you've just delivered. Do not fucking send cold DMs. Fuck. It screams scammer, because if you were really good at what you were doing, you would have a list of people waiting for you to do it for them. And it goes against the natural inclination of human psychology. Anyway, this guy sends me a message. He's got 650,000 followers. Second red flag. 8 posts. Not even Rihanna has 8 posts and 650,000 followers. It's not happening. Not the way that Instagram works today. No sirree. Never going to happen. You look at the posts, either the likes are hidden because they're trying to be shady, or they've got 50 likes. And you're like, okay, you have 600 followers and you've just paid for hundreds of thousands once just to have your account look a specific way. Then in the DM, in the bio, it goes like copywriting professional or some bullshit. You're like, I've never heard of you, brother. You can't be that good. I mean, of course, there's people I haven't heard of that are very good at what they do, but you get what I mean. And then you look at their Instagram and it's just rented cars and jewelry and Rolex shots like this with a Starbucks. And you're like, do you really think that this makes me want to work with you? Like, you looking like a retard on Instagram makes me think that you're capable at your job? Because it doesn't. Not from my perspective. Doesn't make me think anything of you except you're an idiot. And then they're messaging you. They're like, oh, I see you're in the coaching business. How's that going? You don't fucking care, bro. You don't care. No one cares how you're doing. It's fucking bullshit. Yeah, it's a massive scam. Don't fall for that, please. Please don't fall for that. It's just such a pitfall. So silly. I'm not even entirely sure how we got into Instagram scammers, but yeah. Choose your words wisely because they govern your actions, and your actions govern your habits, and your habits govern your behaviors, and your behaviors create who you are and what you get from life. And so if you're willing to say that I'm just a lazy person, then expect the results of that statement. And if you want to get better, maybe you don't want to get better. If you want to get better, which most humans do, even if you work a menial labor job, you want to get more proficient at it because the satisfaction of your boss saying good job helps you mentally, physically, spiritually, psychologically. It does. I'm of the fundamental belief that every human wants to get better at what they do. All of you. All of you want to get better at what you do. You want to feel some level of passion, excitement, and fulfillment in your day-to-day tasks that lights you up every single day. And that doesn't mean you have to go and run your own business. It really doesn't. But it does mean you have to get good at what you're doing. Even if you're just making sales calls for a company that you don't really give a fuck about, why not just become the best salesperson that you can become? And see what a path of development and research and reading and understanding and transforming could deliver you. That's not to say that you go and then run your own call center with all these sales teams and blah, blah, blah. Maybe you don't want the stress of that. That's completely fine. And I understand. I get it. Managing staff is fucking hard. But But even if you don't even want to get promoted in your own company right now, don't you want to get good at the task? Don't you want to really thrive in that position? So where you get excited to go to work instead of disgruntled. Instead of your average morning waking up being grey, it gets to be slightly less grey. Where you have a large vested interest in the process of what you're going through, only so that you can develop yourself and get better. And that the wins and losses don't really mean anything. The results don't mean anything. Of course, you have to get yourself to a certain level where you can feed, clothe, and house yourself. Admittedly, granted. But how do you think you get to that level? By developing, by becoming better, by thinking about things in a different way, by changing your perspective, by allowing yourself to grow and transform and change, reshape the way that you do things. And none of that comes from, but I'm lazy. Because if you believe it'll exist, if you choose to live within that paradigm, then that is exactly what you will have. But if you say, I have been lazy, but I'm willing to change, even if you're just willing to change. I have been lazy, but I know I can change. That's another improvement. I have been lazy in the past, but not anymore. That's when you're cooking. That's when you're really cooking with gas. Because then you'll start to change your ideology. You'll change the way that you think of yourself. You know, I'm getting serious about this now. I'm going to do it. Then you'll change from even mentioning the lazy part to I get things done, because you have a stack of undeniable proof to say that you can, or you have done. You have history to prove your example. Then you're good. Then you find other areas you want to develop and improve on. And that's the joyous part of life, is that there's always going to be segments of the unknown that you're not even aware of. Just like me with the YouTube channel yesterday. Didn't even know I was fucking it up. And yet here we are, learning on the job. Taking great satisfaction in putting it all together. And I think having no aversion to the success or failure of it as well is really a tough skill to master, but a one that's very worthwhile. Knowing that you're like, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm just going to find better ways to do it. I'm just going to keep getting better. And if you've been moderately serious with your life up until now, not even serious, but if you've been moderately invested in your own existence up until this point, you have gotten a lot better. You walk a lot better than you used to. You talk a lot better than you used to as a 3-year-old. You probably do your sport a lot better than you used to if you're taking it somewhat genuinely. You just can't expect these things. You can't expect to be great with a good level of achievement. It's just not how it works. If you want to be great, you have to have a great level of achievement. And this is the thing that I'm talking about that's probably 300 to 500 times more difficult than you thought it was. Or it's going to take 300 to 500 times more effort than you thought that it was originally. But that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is figuring out how much shit it's going to take and then doing it anyway. I think it's part of the fun. Don't you? Maybe not. Maybe that's why you're not in the position you want to be. I don't know. I think it's part of the fun. Because what the fuck else are you going to do anyway? Mope around, fucking vape, watch Netflix and jack off all day? Ugh, boring. Lame. I'm just going to be a victim to my own base desires. Ew. Why? Ew, every time I get hungry, I order Uber Eats and go have Macca's. Sick. Don't you want to fucking travel the world? And like in my position, I want to fight people, obviously. But I only want to find dance partners to get the most out of me. Because you've got to have someone to dance with, especially in a combat sport, obviously. Like, I don't treat these other competitors as my enemies or anything like that. There's nothing to be fucking scared of. It's just like, cool. You're doing your thing your way and you think it's better than my way. I'm willing to put my my chips at the table and say that my way is better than yours. And I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong too, but not forever, because I'll train, I'll get better, and I'll come back. Doesn't that sound exciting? Doesn't it sound like a fun movie? Isn't that the story of every movie? The story of the hero's journey? They're like, oh, I've got some power that I've just figured out that I have. I'm willing to test it against your power that you already know you had for years and years and prepared for this fight that I didn't even know was going to happen. And then you face each other off. The protagonist loses, goes back, learns some shit about themselves, and then the protagonist wins and it's happily ever after. Great. That's how it works. Apply it to your own life. I guarantee you'll get better. I didn't clap at the start, but that's okay. We'll clap at the end. Hopefully you migrated to the channel because you found it, because I haven't figured out a good way to put you here, but we're going to do a post on the community wall, whatever the fuck that means, on YouTube. And hopefully see you in the next one.